Welcome, my fellow attorneys, to the National Bankruptcy Academy video series. I'm your host, Robert Schaller, an attorney with over 34 years of experience and a registered certified public accountant. Today, we'll be discussing Schedule G executory contracts and unexpired leases, with a line-by-line analysis with real-world commentary. I hope you enjoy the video. A debtor's schedule of executory contracts and unexpired leases is officially titled Official Form 106G, Schedule G Executory Contracts and Unexpired Leases. This schedule is commonly referred to as simply as Schedule G. Every Chapter 7 debtor must file a schedule of executory contracts and unexpired leases. But what makes a contract an executory contract? An executory contract, in the bankruptcy context, has a special meaning. A contract is deemed executory when both parties to the contract have continuing obligations on the date the bankruptcy petition is filed. In other words, both parties are required to make further performance. For example, a roofer's contract to replace roofing shingles on a debtor's home is executory if the roofer has not completed the job and the debtor has not paid the contractual price. In contrast, a roofer's contract to replace roofing shingles on a debtor's home is not executory if the roofer has completed the job but the debtor has not yet paid the contractual price. In that case, the contract would not be an executory contract and would be not listed in Schedule G, but the unpaid debt owed to the roofer would be listed in Schedule E/F. The concept of unexpired leases is much easier to comprehend. A lease is a contract where the lessor grants the lessee the right to temporarily possess or use lands, tenements, vehicles, personal property, intangible property, intellectual property, or other assets in return for compensation or other consideration. However, the debtor must recognize that some business agreements crafted as leases will be disregarded by the bankruptcy court and reclassified as a disguised financing agreement, especially when the lessee debtor has the right to buy the property leased for $1 or some nominal sum at the conclusion of the lease term. The debtor must list all of the debtor's executory contracts and unexpired leases, even if the debtor intends to reject the contract or lease. Some debtors make the mistake of only listing those contracts or leases the debtor intends to assume. This is a mistake that must be avoided. The debtor must list all agreements that may be executory contracts or unexpired leases, even if they are listed on Schedule A/B property. The following is a partial list of leases and contracts that must be listed. Residential leases, for example, a rental agreement for a place where the debtor lives or vacations, even if only a verbal or month-to-month agreement. Service provider agreements, for example, contracts for cell phones and personal electronic devices. Another example, internet and cable contracts. Vehicle leases, supplier or service contracts, for example, contracts for lawn care or home alarm or security systems. Timeshares, contracts or leases. Rent-to-own contracts. Employment contracts. Real estate listing agreements. Contracts to sell a residence, building, land, or other real property. Equipment leases. Leases for businesses or investment property. Supplier and service contracts for the debtor's businesses. Copyrights and patent license agreements. Now, let's turn our attention to this bankruptcy form with a line-by-line analysis with real-world commentary. I hope you enjoy this video. So now let's complete Schedule G. As we can see, this is the familiar black box at the top that says, fill in this information to identify your case. So we're going to identify the debtor and the debtor's spouse. In this case will be George and Martha Washington. So debtor 1, George Washington. And debtor 2, Martha Washington. And this case is going to be filed in the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. So we're going to come over here to the pull-down menu, and we're going to scroll down looking for the Eastern District of Virginia. And there we found it, and now I'll click on it. The next is the case number, but since this Schedule G is going to be filed with the petition, there'll be no case number assigned. And the reason for that is the case number is not assigned to the court until the petition is filed. So when all of the schedules are filed with the petition at the same time, those schedules do not have a case number that are entered by the debtor. Instead, the clerk of the court will identify the case number typically electronically. So in this case, the case number will be blank, but had it been a refiling, we would have added the case number. So let's do that. And we would check over here, check this box if this is an amended filing. However, in the case of George and Martha Washington, this is not amended filing. This is the original Schedule G. So we're going to unclick the box. And since this case is being filed, the petition and the Schedule G at the same time, there will be no case number assigned. So we're going to delete the case number from the form. Moving down the form, you can see it's official Form 106G with the title Schedule G, Executory Contracts and Unexpired Leases. Now let's go through the instructions. It says, quote, be as complete and accurate as possible. If two married people are filing together, both are equally responsible for supplying correct information. If more space is needed, copy the additional page, fill it out, number the entries, and attach it to this page. Let's look down to line 1. It asks the question, do you have any executory contracts or unexpired leases? And the answer is either no or yes. If the answer is no, check the first box. And the form says, check this box and file this form with the court with your other schedules. You have nothing else to report on this form. However, in the case of George and Martha Washington, they do have either executory contracts or unexpired leases. So I'm going to unclick the box no, and instead click the box yes, which says yes, with the directions fill in all the information below, even if the contracts or leases are listed on Schedule A/B property. Now let's scroll down to question 2. Question 2 states list separately each person or company with whom you have the contract or lease. Then state what each contract or lease is for. For example, rent, vehicle leases, cell phones. So let's start going down the form, and you can see it starts with person or company with whom you have the contract or lease. To the right column, it says state what the contract or lease is for. So let's fill it out for George and Martha Washington's agreements. Number 2.1 says name. So we're going to include the name of Ford Motor Credit Company. And the address. And the city, state, and zip. And now we have to complete the statement, what the contract or lease is for. And I like to be specific with my information. Some attorneys simply just put something down very simple like a car loan. I don't like that. I like to be more specific to make it easier for the court and the Chapter 7 panel trustee to understand fully which contract or which lease we're talking about. So in this case, I'm going to say George Washington leases a 2018 Ford Taurus for $238 per month.